As we told in previous sections, when we defined architecture and features of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution, threat and vulnerability management is capability of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution that can help you track down, identify, assess, and remediate your organization endpoint devices vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and weak spots, which means this feature will harden and increase a level of your endpoint device's security posture. Therefore, threat and vulnerability capability can be classified as a security strengthening capability. By now, you should know that endpoint devices need to be onboarded via local script or group policy or something else to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution in order to start using Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution capabilities, and threat and vulnerability management is one of these capabilities. The moment endpoint machine is onboarded to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution, its built-in sensors start to send various data continuously: file data, network logs, registry values, software update data, file system changes, and many more, which we already explained before. Now, if you remember service adoption order, you will know that endpoint detection and response, so-called EDR, is first in service adoption order, which means that all these various data collected by sensors is the same data that is used for endpoint detection and response capabilities. And for threat and vulnerability management feature, this same already collected data will be used. So to say, threat and vulnerability management capability does not include collecting endpoint machine data, but includes organizing that already collected data in a such way that it is visible for you in a console in a specific way, so that you can see management panes as dashboard, recommendations, remediation, inventories, weaknesses, and event timeline, which provides you insights in overview of collected data recognized as weakness and exposure, recommended steps based on collected data, and many more, which will be explained later on. But since this is a video about onboarding devices to threat and vulnerability management, for now it is enough to understand what onboarding devices to threat and vulnerability management actually means. It does not mean that some specific manual actions on endpoints or Defender for Endpoint solution site needs to be done to onboard devices to threat and vulnerability management. Instead of that, it means that once endpoint machine is onboarded to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution, various endpoint machine data captured by sensors starts to get collected by Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution, and threat and vulnerability management console in a background organizes and processes that data in a such way that it is available and visible to you as a specific management options. So to say, devices onboarded to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint solution are automatically liable for threat and vulnerability management. On top of onboarding devices to threat and vulnerability management, let's explore what is done by threat and vulnerability management capabilities, so that it is visible to you in a management portal. So, first we need to access Threat and Vulnerability Management Console dashboard. So let's go to Vulnerability Management and select Dashboard here. So let's go to Vulnerability Management and select Dashboard here. Let's see Organization Exposure Score and Microsoft Secure Score for devices. On these two, I can choose Improve Score option, as you can see right here. These two scores are based on telemetry data, which is constantly reported by sensors from endpoint machines once after they are onboarded. And let's see this one, organization exposure score. Here it is. So this organization exposure score is based on a few parameters, like discovered data reported by sensors, which is recognized as a weakness on endpoint machines, possibility of your machines to be breached based on suspicious activity, and of course, higher this exposure score is, less strong your organization's security is. So here we can see top security recommendations. So once threat and vulnerability management collects telemetry data and detects vulnerabilities from that data, depending on the possible impacts of that vulnerabilities, threat and vulnerability management will generate top security recommendations. And based on that top security recommendations, you can later manually create a remediation actions. Next, we have Microsoft Secure Score for devices. Here it is. As you can see here, you have shown security posture of your machines divided across various different segments, like application, operating system, network, accounts, and security controls. For each of these categories, there will be generated security recommendations to execute in your environment. To see that, let's click on Improve Score. And here you can see various recommendations. And under Related Component, you can see these segment types we just mentioned. For example, you can see these recommendations are for security control categories, or network, or operating system. And if you select any of these, let me select any of these security recommendations, you can see a lot of more details and next step instructions. So let me close that. For now, it is enough to know that basically Microsoft's Secure Score for devices directly depends on security status of endpoint machines across mentioned categories: application, operating system, network, accounts, and security controls. So let's go back to the dashboard. And next in the line is device exposure distribution, right here. This is nothing more than graphical view that maps number of devices and their exposure level, low, medium or high. So if you click on this graph on any exposure level, let's select this medium one. As you can see, you will be redirected to device inventory, which will show a list of all devices with exposure level that you have selected on a graph. We selected medium, and at the moment we don't have any medium exposure level device. But if we do, it will be shown here. So let's go back on a dashboard. So here below device exposure distribution, we have top remediation activities. Top remediation activities shows us remediation actions we have done. And these remediation actions are something we will explain in more details in next lesson. On the left side, we have top events and top vulnerable software. So top events and top vulnerable software shows exactly what their name says, based on number of exposed devices, weaknesses, and so on. And at the end of the dashboard, we have top exposed devices list, which is calculated based on exposure level, discovered vulnerabilities, and security recommendations. Now, since we mentioned vulnerabilities in our explanations, let's talk a little bit about them. So here in Threat and Vulnerability Management Console, in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Administration Portal, we have Weaknesses pane. And that pane refers to vulnerabilities directly. You can see here a lot of CVEs, and that are listed vulnerabilities on endpoint devices. Under Related Software, you can see vulnerabilities mapped to software. For example, if you search here for Excel, let us search for Excel. So now that we have searched for Excel, we will get a list of all vulnerabilities on our endpoint machines that are related directly to Excel product. Let's close this filter. So if I hover my mouse here below threats, I can see breach insights and threat insights for that selected vulnerability. As it states here, breach insights shows whether there are any active alerts associated with that selected vulnerability. So I can see now that for my vulnerabilities there are no active alerts. Threat insights will be highlighted in a red color if any public exploit is available for that specific vulnerability. Let's try to find some vulnerability which is highlighted in my environment. Let's find some vulnerability with highlighted threat insight. Here it is, this one. You will most probably want to see which devices and which softwares detected vulnerabilities are associated. To do so for softwares, you need to go to Inventories below Vulnerability Management pane. And if you, for example, wish to see which one of discovered vulnerabilities are associated with Chrome software, then you will select Chrome and you will click Open Software page. And from here, select Discovered Vulnerabilities. Now, as we told, you can see vulnerabilities related to that specific software. For devices, you will do the same from Device Inventory. So let's go there to Device Inventory. And here, if you select any device, let's choose this first, Test Machine 1. Here on the right side, on the three dots, you will select Discovered Vulnerabilities. And there you will have a list with all vulnerabilities associated with that particular device, regardless on which software these vulnerabilities are related to. For this device, I have only one. Now let's return to Weaknesses pane below Vulnerability Management dashboard. And let's select any of these vulnerabilities. For example, this one. And here on the top, you can see option Report Inaccuracy. As its name states, its purpose is to report something you have detected as inaccurate in terms of being recognized as vulnerability. For example, that wrong version is getting reported as vulnerability, or vulnerability has been detected on a software that is not present in your organization at all. In that case, you will report inaccuracy. So here, when you click Report Inaccuracy, you can choose any of these options depending on what your use case is. And you can see that different options opens new set of details to provide. So if I choose this option, I am asked to provide what related software is. And if I choose this option, then I am asked something else. And that's it for this video, which was about onboarding devices to threat and vulnerability management. And we also saw how threat and vulnerability management capabilities are displayed to you in a management console. In next lesson, we will see how to reduce organization weakness by using threat and vulnerability management.